What's up, gamers and game collectors? Today we have a special broadcast at the National Video Game Museum at the Frisco Discovery Center. We're going to take a look at a lot of great things in gaming history, a lot of awesome stuff. Without further ado, we'll jump into it. This is the very beginning of video games. It's important, right? I mean, you needed this. Without this, you wouldn't have Mario Brothers. You wouldn't have any of the famous series that would have came because of the advancements in video games. So there's a place for it. My first game console, the Atari 2600, is my first experience with video games. Pico Vision, that's one I always heard about but never played. Vectrex, that's pretty badass actually. It's all vector-based graphics.
Oh yeah?
It has a little controller in the front. It's all self-contained. You take the games and you swap them out, and they have little overlays that go over top of the screens too. Of course, the NES, my second console ever. Lots of great games for that. It's really when gaming kind of started to go into a direction where it was about a story or an end goal, you know, not just about scores. And some in-between stuff. Sega Master System was probably the underdog at that time, had a lot of great games for it. Didn't really take off in the States, but in Europe it took off really well. In Brazil you can still even get them to this day. And of course the OG Game Boy. Pretty important for me. That was the game console I went to battle on the playground with. It's the one I stood and died by. Mortal Kombat was probably the biggest thing back then. Who was the best Mortal Kombat player? Which version was the best Mortal Kombat version? TurboGrafx 16. Always wanted one of those, but even now, can't afford to get one. Neo Geo AES, bring the arcade home. And you definitely could, but you had to have the money to do it. Phillips CDI. Game Gear. I knew a lot of kids that had them whenever I was small. I didn't have one, but they were always cool. And the SNES, my arch rival as a kid, because it was either one or the other. You had the Nintendo or you had the Genesis. I didn't have that one, but I played it occasionally at a friend's house. 3DO. Kind of a nice jump in graphical fidelity. No. Of course, it didn't really last too long. Price tag was high on it. Software really wasn't there for I mean, you had pretty much Electronic Arts as the main supporter of the 3DO, and then a couple other third-party developers, but not many. So it didn't really go anywhere. I can't really talk about the Amiga CD32 considering we didn't really have it here. There was a couple in Canada. I think there was about 10,000 or so units that were sold in Canada, but they never really made it to the States. And we have the infamous Atari Jaguar. Cool concept. Execution was a little bit flawed, actually a lot of bit flawed. You know, it's kind of the same story with the 3DO, not a lot of third-party development, and it was a nightmare to program for, so it was pretty much written in the cards that it was going to die. Neo Geo CD. It was just a poor man's version of the AES, but it was a little too late, and it didn't really work out here in the States. Mostly took off in Japan and somewhat in Europe, but never really had a chance to even grow here in the States. Pico, Sega Pico, if anybody remembers this from their childhood, they probably didn't even realize it was a Sega product. Somewhat of a game console. It was just basically a way to extend the life of the Genesis hardware that they had developed. But yeah, nothing really notable. I mean, it's a story-focused system. Apple Pippin. Yet another failed console that didn't get anywhere because of marketing and/or development. There's a lot more failures in video game history than there are successes. Of course, we have the OG PlayStation, the one that revolutionized 3D gaming. It was a console made for 3D gaming, which its competition, the Saturn, really wasn't designed with 3D gaming in mind, and they kind of shoehorned in the ability to do 3D graphics on it at the last minute whenever they heard about what the Sony PlayStation was going to be doing. But it is a 2D powerhouse. There's tons of great 2D games for the Saturn, and there's a bunch of actually really good 3D games that kind of even put some of the PlayStation offerings to shame. And the Virtual Boy, never had one. I played it once at a store at a demo. I think it was Wario Land 3D or something like that. Wasn't great. It made my eyes hurt. I think it was just, you know, the technology wasn't quite there yet. Yeah, they tried to push it, and it didn't really happen. Got the N64, love it or hate it. I mean, there's a bunch of games on it that are great, and then there's a lot of filler. They didn't really have a vast library, mainly because of third-party support. It it wasn't necessarily hard to develop for. The problem with it was the limitations on the actual cartridge sizes themselves. So that kind of really put pressure on the developers to get smarter with how they program for it. The Gamecom. I don't know if it was supposed to be the Game.com. I'm pretty sure it was supposed to be Gamecom, but it was a pretty crappy Tiger handheld console, quote unquote. Game Boy Color. Game Boy Color was actually my first Game Boy. I was late adopter of the Game Boy just because I wasn't a real big fan of the black and white pixel graphics. But yeah, it was pretty cool. I played a lot of Pokemon back in the day on it. And we got the Neo Geo Pocket Color. I never played it. Never had anybody that I know had it. But there's some pretty cool stuff on it. Got Metal Slug and some King of Fighters games and actually some Sonic games. There's a lot of Sega licensed stuff on there, which is really surprising. And then a couple of my favorites. This is actually my favorite generation of gaming right here. Got the Sega Dreamcast. Tons of great games for it. Highly underrated console. It was way ahead of its time, literally and figuratively. And then below the competition that actually killed it, the PlayStation 2. There actually has been rumors that Sony was so threatened by the Dreamcast that they had actually leaked the source code of the Dreamcast in order to kind of like mitigate. I don't know how much of that is actually true, but you know, it is hearsay. PlayStation 2 being a really great console, which makes up the vast majority of all the games that I have in my collection. I have about 400 PS2 games. I have about close to 200 Dreamcast games. So yeah, that's, like I said, my favorite era of gaming. Then Game Boy Advance. I didn't really get into the Game Boy Advance. I wasn't really into handhelds that much. But Game Boy Advance did have some great games. I mean, the Castlevania games, the Super Mario games, basically the rehashes of the old Super Nintendo games. Nintendo is probably one of their most underrated consoles, the GameCube. It was not necessarily a commercial failure, but it didn't do as well as they thought it was going to do. It was a bit of a bounce back from the N64, but Nintendo being Nintendo decided they were going to put constraints in the way of actual disc size. They did decide to go with DVDs. Problem being the DVDs were about half the size of a regular DVD, so naturally you can only fit about half the size a DVD could actually fit. So that was a major constraint on the GameCube, probably one of the factors leading to its demise, maybe? I don't know. And then they didn't have DVD support as well, so you know that kind of killed them. PS2 had DVD support, and OG Xbox with a dongle you could purchase separately. You too could have DVD support. Xbox was a powerhouse. It was built on a PowerPC kind of architecture. It was the most powerful console at its time. It actually could do 720p full HD on some games, but you know, you didn't have the same type of first-party support that PlayStation had. You didn't have a lot of the overseas support for the Xbox. Let's see, you got the N-Gage, Nintendo DS, PSP. PSP is pretty great. The good thing is they still used optical media, which means you could, at that time, you could get more bang for your buck. Did a lot more on a UMD than you could on any like flash style media at that time for price-wise. So you had a lot more capability to do larger, more detailed games, which is a pretty good advantage at that time. Xbox 360, I mean, that generation Xbox 360 was probably the most powerful console. Well, we'll say the most well-utilized console. not necessarily the most powerful, because arguably the PS3's cell architecture was better. It was just extremely hard to program for. So developers were really struggling at the very beginning of the PlayStation 3's life cycle. They were really struggling on how to develop for it because of the cell architecture, which made it really difficult. And then we have the most gimmicky console that Nintendo had ever came out with, which really has some great games for it. If you dig deep in the library, if you don't mind the motion controls. They don't necessarily have the current gen, but they have the last gen stuff here. They have the Xbox One, PS4, and surprisingly, the two that actually overlap in this generation here is the Wii U and the Switch. They're technically in the same generation. Switch being the better, of course. Wii U did have some gems, which they inevitably ported over to the Switch, which pretty much made the Wii U a forgotten thing. The Net Yorozi. This was purposely built so you or I could go buy this development kit and make games with the PlayStation architecture. Not full-on games, because there was some things that were locked out, so you couldn't like create like Klonoa or something out of it. You could basically just do basic games with it. But it's pretty cool that Sony offered that. There's a dev kit for the Sega CD and Genesis. N64 dev cart. Yeah, I think it's a PlayStation 1 dev kit actually. Game Boy. It's pretty cool. SNES. Oh, that's awesome. It's like a SCSI drive. They mounted to a cartridge. It's amazing how they did all that. Oh, the katana. That's the Dreamcast Dev Kit. That's awesome. There are a lot of lost games that have been found on those. 3DO M2 system. I think that's a PlayStation 1 test kit right there. It's like one of the first games I played. I think that was everybody's game on the NES. If you grew up in the United States, that was the game. Back in the day, whenever you had to use your imagination and what the actual game looked like. For real. Atari ports. Duke Nukem and Halo 2600. That's something you don't see every day. Surprisingly, there is a lot of like developers that make, well, it's more homebrew for old gaming systems, particularly 2600 and NES, Sega Genesis. Bible Adventures, that's a very expensive game, like in the box. Of course, it's a unlicensed NES game. Ooh, that's pretty cool. Oh, good thing we're going the right way. The Duke, it's actually a really good controller. For adults, it's a great controller because it fits your hands great. I got the Sega Saturn 3D controller. I always wanted that Turbo Touch 360 for the NES. I thought that was so cool back in the day. The Samba de Amigo Dreamcast bundle with the maracas. Yeah, I've been looking for that for a while. It can get pretty pricey. Wanted the activator as a kid, but I don't know how good it actually ever was. Same thing with the Power Glove. It was a lot of hype.
A lot of gimmicky.
Yeah, it was. A lot of those third-party peripherals were kind of hype anyway. The only one worth a damn that I can see in here is actually that Time Crisis Gun Con. Anything, any of the gun cons were good, especially the Namco ones. What's that power pad? Oh. God, I can't remember how many of these little throwaway handhelds I had as a kid, especially like the football and stuff. I didn't like sports, but just having a handheld video game whenever I was a kid was so cool. It didn't matter what it was. I used to have a bunch of those Tiger handhelds. I think it probably has some in here too. Surprisingly not. The old Coleco, like mini arcade machines. There's like all the swipe cards they used to have, the e-readers for the Game Boy. Oh, they actually have a new in-box e-reader.
Yeah, they had like Pokemon cards that you could like.
The Game & Watch gallery stuff. It's kind of where Nintendo got into video games, actually. Probably, yeah, the DS is probably one of the better Nintendo handhelds. That's when they started to actually like have some horsepower and you can get true 3D gaming on the go. Like this old kind of like 80s.
Store closing?
Yeah. Well, it was like back in the day, they didn't have like in the 80s, they didn't have video game stores, right? They had software stores you'd go to, or they had computer stores that sold software and video games. But yeah, like it's like the mid 80s of the video game. It was like what, 83 or something like that. Video game crash. Yeah, 1983. Yeah, when I was born. Yay. I was responsible for killing the whole entire first and second generations of video games. Yep. And Nintendo is the one that pulled everybody out of the slump, I guess. Is this a copy from the dump? It looks like it.
Try to play it. It's really hard to look at for an extended amount of time. It's super hard to look at.
Fire,
like
fire,
I feel
fire,
like I'm getting
fire.
eye cancer.
Oh yeah, why is it cup? Can you?
Yeah.
Oh. Give me my neck, boy. I'm pushing up, it ain't doing nothing.
He looks like a fetus.
Oh, okay, I can fly. Yay! Oh. What? Okay. Not worrying about it. I think I tried playing that as a kid, and I was like super disappointed. Oh, that is awesome. Yeah, PC gaming was way off limits for me until about 98, 99. Commodore Amiga in 1985. That one actually looks relatively cool. Even though it's got a tiny screen. Look at that version of Pac-Man though. Commodore. Oh, it's on an Atari 800? God, look at this. TI-99 4A computer, 1979.
The Texas Instruments?
I guess. It's actually running a video game. Crazy. With color. Wow. Huh, it's pretty cool. So this little exhibit tells you how they made sprites back in the day. Hand-drawn sprites. Oh, it's Mario Paint. Yeah, we have that actually. Oh, let me get the flies, guys. Come here. Let me just get flies. Flies. Donkey Kong was really ahead of its time. I mean, it made Genesis games look pretty sad in comparison. Even being a Genesis fan at the time, I was just like, holy crap, this looks amazing. It looks 3D. Donkey Kong Country was a great platformer. The original Donkey Kong was a cultural phenomenon. I mean, you can see all this stuff here from the old, the OG game. So, Action 52 is a unlicensed, unauthorized game. I think their biggest claim to fame is the Cheetah Men game. Oh wow, listen to that music. That's coming out of an NES. Holy crap. And they got digital voices. What the hell? I mean, there's worse, right? I guess, maybe? I mean, it controls just fine. I mean, I've played legit friggin' Nintendo games that control worse than this. Play the OG Cheetah. The Cheetah Man! Oh, that's Cheetah Man too there. Oh, okay, gotcha. This is the OG Cheetah Man. You gotta get down on the OG Cheetah Man. I'm your host, Ryan. Oh, wow. What's this? Private Eye? Oh. Do you want to play the Virtual Boy? Oh yeah. Actually, it's not as bad as I remember, actually. Oh, yeah. Too bad you can't see this. Oh, okay. I'm small Wario now. There's a whole bunch of stuff here I'd never even heard of. What's this VFX1? I think that may have been actually more or less like the, is that a home unit? Is it for Voodoo Rush Accelerator? Wow.
Oh, so yeah, computer.
Wow, that's crazy. Huh. Mortal Kombat! Bam, 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 bam. This was pretty cool, like back in the day, like
Oh yeah, the badges.
yeah. So you could send in your high scores and you can actually get badges from the video game companies. That's how it's like physical proof that you're a badass at that game. Dreamcast, I've seen it. I like that. I want it. I want it. Wanna smash? Wanna smash? we definitely, I have to show you all like all these little things up here, like the game stations. Oh, it's awesome. I'd never played a friggin' TurboGrafx 16 until I came here. Because I didn't know anybody had any as a kid. Ooh. Here's all the rare variants here. I want one of these. They're ridiculously priced though. The Mountain Dew Xbox. And then, of course, the Pikachu
Yeah.
N64. Japanese Panasonic Q system. There's so much stuff here to see, it's hard. I mean, you're gonna see something new every second. Ah, where Nintendo got their start, Hanafuda card. This is a holy grail on the PS1. Elemental gun bolt with the gun. Like the case, that's well over $1,000 right there. Well over $1,000. I'd love to have it. Probably never ever gonna see it in my lifetime. No, have and hold.
Hands-on.
Yeah, there's so few of those made. Key Games VCS. That's cool looking. The Marlboro friggin' Abedullah team. Atari Lynx. Oh, X-Man. These are all a bunch of Holy Grail games, like legit. Crusader Senti, Musha, Little Samson, that's like upwards of $1,000. Magical Chase. This is one game I'll probably never have for the Sega 32X. Is Amazing Spider-Man Web of Fire. Monk's Adventure on the NES. Bubble Bobble 2, that was a late release in the NES's lifespan. Contra Force. Snow Brothers. Cheetah Man. Clay Fighters Sculptor's Cut, that's a stupid expensive N64 game. Snowboard Kids 2, that's another one that's a stupid, rare, and expensive stunt racer. These are all, I mean, Dracula X, come on. Oh my God. Stadium events. Panzer Dragoon Saga. That's one of my Saturn Holy Grails right there. I'd love to have that. Dragon Force, Magical Knight Ray Earth, Snatcher, KO Flying Squadron, Shining Force CD. Love to have every single one of those. Suikoden 2, Radiant Silver Gun. Mega Man Legends 2, not hard to obtain. But The Misadventures of Trombone, that's a stupid expensive game and it's hard to find. Tomba 2, another one. Dark Side for the 32X, European exclusive and is stupid hard to find. It's like a Chinese knockoff of the Dreamcast that actually played Dreamcast games. Had a little screen built into it and everything. I've seen a couple of these. They're kind of expensive though. Neo Geo AES, we saw that earlier, but they're stupid expensive. The cartridges can go anywhere from $250 to $3,000 a piece. Stupid expensive. MXX. A lot of that stuff got started on the MSX, like the Metal Gear game. That was on MSX before it was on the NES. Hideo Kojima actually did the MSX port. He didn't do the NES port, but it's based on his. PC Engine LT. Has a little screen with it, a TV tuner. A lot of stuff that we didn't get here just because the TurboGrafx didn't really take off. I think we did get the Turbo Express. Oh yeah, the TurboGrafx Turbo Express, which is basically a portable PC Engine. Those are stupid expensive now. I mean, I think just the console by itself is like $400. Same thing goes with like the TurboGrafx 16. They're just stupid expensive stuff just because we didn't get much of it here. But you can get like basically the same piece of hardware in Japan. Like you get the PC Engine, you can get those for under $100 all day. And if you actually go to Japan, you can get them for like 15, 20 bucks. It's ridiculous. I actually used to have those, the Mortal Kombat figures. Castlevania 2, Lord of Shadows. Got like a skeletonized Ms. Pac-Man. That's pretty cool. This is like the first game that I played for the Game Boy, I think.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, one of my friends, they had the Game Boy and
For me, it
The
was
OG.
this and there was a Bomberman game.
a Bomberman Land or something like that, or was it actually like
Yeah. I'm not sure. It was so long ago.
Ooh, Sonic Jam. So, what's your name and what do you do here?
My name is John Hardy, and I am one of the founders of the museum.
So, how did this all come about? Whose idea was this?
So my partners and I have two partners in this endeavor, and we've been collecting games since the early 80s, right? Before anybody thought to collect any of this stuff, most of it was getting thrown out at the time, and we started saving stuff. We didn't actually meet until the late 90s, but when we did, we realized we had a similar, interest that we were doing in collecting. And we started one of the very first video game conventions called Classic Gaming Expo. Okay. That was 1999. We ran that up to about 2014. And then during that time, our museum, which was once, part of the actual show, kind of kept growing as we were shipping more of our stuff out there. Other people were bringing stuff in. It got to the point where the museum was pretty large and one of the highlights. In 2004, we went to E3, the big trade show, and said, "You want us to do a historical exhibit?" And they said, "Yes." We actually won Best of Show award that first year for our, classic video game thing. And then we kind of morphed into doing more and more shows. So we've done Game Developer Conference, PAX East, PAX South, South by Southwest, Comic-Cons, things like that. And we got up to about 5 shows a year. At one of those shows, we met a guy named Randy Pitchford. He's the head of Gearbox Software. They're, Battleborn and Borderlands, the big games. And he said, I love what you're doing. Why don't you come down to my area in Frisco? He goes, we're moving our offices to Frisco. He goes, meet the people, the city. And we did. We came down. We met up with the mayor and the CDC, EDC, and they loved the concept we promoted. Pushed that. Hey, an interactive museum. It's not just stuffy and boring. You get to play the stuff as you learn. Yeah. And they liked the idea, and they invested the money to build out this and add additional parking outside. And then we hired design firms to come in and build the exhibits. And that's how we ended up in Frisco. And gotcha. Opened up in 2016.
Gotcha. I actually came here when you guys first opened up. Oh, do you have anything in your collection, or in the museum's collection, do you consider like a holy grail item or some of the most expensive items that you?
Yeah, several. Early on, you might have seen that we have a couple of systems called. One's a Puppy Pong, and the other one's a Dr. Pong. The Dr. Pong, there's only 3 known to still exist today. Puppy Pong, there's only 2. So those are pretty rare pieces. Over in our what we call our Flexhibit area, we have the Sega Neptune, which was a combination 32X and Genesis. That's the only one known to exist. We do have a Sega Pluto, which is not on display right now. That's been cycled out, but as you go through, you'll see a lot of one-offs sometimes.
Yeah.
In here's the Barbie Game Boy. There was a sparkle pink Game Boy that was never actually made. There's only 2 of those in the world. So yeah, really cool stuff.
Cool. All right. Well, I appreciate it.
No problem.
I will definitely come by and see us again. If you're ever in Frisco, Texas, you want to check it out, it's a great place to come and see. All right. Well, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.